Welcome back to the program. You are watching the Monday Report. We're seeing a lot of your feedback on this gender agenda discussion this evening. 2243 is the SMS line, and the hashtag is the Monday Report. Let's put up a couple of tweets. These are some of your thoughts and sentiments this evening. Okay, they're coming up on this screen. Let's see. Gusale, you say, unfortunately, Wahiga, the gender agenda is a political vehicle for aspirants to use when seeking power. Once power is attained, another agenda is superimposed over gender equality. Okay, I want to hear from my guests on that one. What else do we have? Robert, let's put up the next one. Soko analyst, the best way to enforce the two-third gender rule is to ensure that all presidential and gubernatorial aspirants pick women as their deputy or vice versa. This isn't an issue of debate, but a constitutional matter. We must honor the law as it is the equalizer of men and women in our engagements. Orutwa Sam, how do... No, I disagree with this one. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. I think we've read this one already. Edwin Nyakweba, you say, ask your panelists if they are presented with two teams. Team A has a female running mate. Team B doesn't. Will they vote Team A? Or rather, if a female candidate vies for presidency, will they vote for her? Keep in mind the numbers. Okay. Santoni Peter, this contract. Okay, we'll just let this one pass. Someone says women must work hard for these positions themselves. They cannot just be handed over to them on a silver platter. Those are the views of Kenyans this evening. And let's start with the last one. There's someone and there's a group that have that feeling that that's what's happening in our political dispensation this time round.
I'd like to strongly disagree with that. As someone who has been in the trenches, as someone who has hands-on experience working with the women aspirants who are now candidates. And I can tell you, Wahiga, we have worked with the ladies as early as even 2017, 2018. And most of those women are very clear on what it is they want to achieve. We have sat with them in terms of their preparation. If you look at the quality of campaigns, the quality of manifestos the women have come up with, they're really high quality. What then goes wrong? At the end of the day, we know that tactics such as violence, which they know will easily intimidate them, are what are displayed and really deployed to discourage them. Secondly, we have the issue of resources, and we have seen several studies that have shown, Wahiga, how much women have to spend in order to match their male counterparts. So really, it's unfortunate if there is still that school of thought, and I think women have proven themselves, and even if they look at a number of the processes, I'll give again the example of the appointment of the Chief Justice. It was a vetting that was out in the public, and we all saw how hard the Chief Justice currently in office worked to answer the question. So I think we need to really dispel with that kind of thought, and women have proven themselves not just in leadership, for whatever it is they're going for. They're not expecting free seats. All they want is a fair chance at the ballot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Priscilla, which one do you want to respond to? Maybe you start with the first, someone who sent a message saying it's a political vehicle. Aspirants are going to say all the right things at this time, but once they get into power, the gender equality discussion ends. How do you keep political parties, presidential candidates and aspirants accountable now and into the future?
I think one of the things that we are saying is the sort of formal manifestos are not out yet, but we have the outlines of the manifestos, and the outlines are quite impressive. I think that the azimio candidate, for example, already has women economic empowerment as part of his 10-point agenda, and I think the UDA candidate as well. So I think that the governments or the presidential candidates, there will be no choice but to follow through with the promises. But what helps the promises most is the numbers of women in parliament, is the numbers of women in decision-making, the budget process, so that then you can ensure things like water, like healthcare, are then well covered. If Baba has promised Baba Care, ensure that it is then matched with resources. So it is still the numbers game. It still has to go down to the number of women that get elected, but then that we all have to stay the course. And I don't think it's true. In the last two elections, I think women have tried, even when they've come onto parliament. I mean, these two-thirds has been Duale 1, Duale 2, BBI, you know, there has been a lot of effort, and I think that the women have stayed the course. I think that we just now need the country. In fact, the question has been that this is not a women's agenda. This is an agenda for the Kenyan society. It's an equality agenda. It is an inclusion agenda. Remember, we're not even speaking about young people. We're not speaking about persons with disability. So it's not even a women's agenda. It should be an agenda for both men and women so that the society moves forward. And I want to give credit to really that many people stay the course. I remember we, long hours went into trying to get the the numbers brought to the constitutional threshold.
What do you then make, and either of you can respond to this, if this viewer who says that if you're presented with two teams, one has a female running mate and one doesn't, should that automatically sway a voter? Is that, I guess they're asking, is that the game changer?
A lot of it will depend, of course, on the quality of that particular individual. But, of course, it is a factor. The same way we're indicating if we had, and we have the ladies who are strong candidates being allowed to go by themselves in mainstream main parties as presidential candidates, would not think twice about it. But here is a point that we need to look at, that it's not, again, voting for Priscilla because she is a woman. It is about what has she been able to prove. And what we're indicating is that a lot of the women candidates we have proven themselves as leaders first and foremost, who happen to be women. And secondly, which I'd like to reiterate, is that Kenyans need to also take stock of the progression we are making. A very important point in history is being made. If you look at where we started with affirmative action, and Priscilla is here, I'll use her as a good example. She did start out as a county member of parliament, and now she's decided to go for the Senate. That's progression. That's not asking for free seats. If you look at the number of gubernatorial candidates, I think in almost 70 to 80% of our counties were Higa. For the first time, we had a woman throwing herself in the race to go for nominations. We had the examples of Busia County, where the lady, even if she didn't win, and you look at the number of votes she had, Honorable Florence Mutua did very well, and that is a mark in history, and that's what we want to indicate to Kenyans, that we need to look at it progressionally, and women who have been able to test leadership are being bold enough now to go for even bigger seats. And what we want at the end of the day is not the perception that they're asking for free seats or they need to be voting in simply because they're women, but let us see their track record, and I can vouch, because we've worked with these ladies, that they have really been exemplary. But finally, gender equality is not a question for women. As Priscilla has said, the ideal actually is that we should not be speaking of gender equality because it has been mainstreamed in every aspect of our decision making. I'll give the example of a country such as the Kingdom of Spain. They have progressed to the point of having a foreign policy that is feminist. What does that mean? That in every decision they make, in every partnership and every bilateral engagement they're having, their first question is, where does it stand to benefit women and girls? And that's the ideal we should be working towards. That it is normal to make sure that when we are discussing roads, let's bring the concerns of men, but also how does this impact on women? When we are talking about our budgets, when we are talking about conflict and disaster management, it's very normal for us to consider both the male perspective and the female perspective and the impact it has on the different citizens. And that's the ideal we are working towards. We have started on a very good note, and our hope is that Kenyans understand at the end of the day, the more we have both quality men and women at decision making, the better our country will be.
Okay, very, very interesting. Okay, say one thing, Priscilla, then I read some SMSs here.
Sure, I want to go on to that with the Team A and Team B, because the best scenario for women is actually that both teams have women. In the Team Azimio, we have Martha Karua and Honorable Sabina. You know, both with very good track records. I mean, Martha's track record in this country is not something you want to defend. So the idea of free seats doesn't even arise for somebody with as rich a track record as Martha. So that Azimio, Team A can have either Sabina or Martha Karua, and that's a good ticket. Team B can have Anne Waiguru or Alice Wahome. So, in fact, the perfect scenario is that we have women in both teams as running mates, so that whichever outcome the election produces, then produces a deputy president who's a woman. That, for me, is my most ideal. So if Team A and Team B then put women, then the question becomes quality. The quality of the presidential candidate, the quality of the gender promises, and the quality of the woman who's then put in as running mate. But in terms of the numbers, I think all sides are not excused.
All sides are not excused.
No.
Several women have come forward, according to the Registrar of Political Parties, and said, we actually don't forget about the deputy president seat. We want the top seat. Let's talk about them for a bit. Shouldn't those who want to push the gender agenda even further then rally behind one of those?
The only problem is that politics is also in reality, and it is in context. And so maybe sometimes you want to push within certain context. And, you know, politics is the art of the possible. It's not the art of impossible. So what I personally would prefer, because we are also building parties, we are also building strong parties, and I personally really favor the strong parties mainstreaming the gender question as opposed to women running as independent candidates. So I think the best scenario is still what we have, that the Azimio coalition or the Kenya Kwanza coalition, that women are mainstreamed therein. If you try to vie alone, the barriers now hit you even more. When you're in a party, the barriers are a bit, you are cushioned a little bit. Out there, you are now really on your own, and you may not make as much impact as we would have wanted. But the future, that is the future. There indeed will be. Even this conversation we are having now is for us to move to that future faster. Because if there's a running mate now who is a woman, then the future possibility is that in 2027 you will have a presidential candidate with a reasonable chance of success who is a woman.
You've actually taken away my next question, which would have been, how soon is that future, or how far away is that future? I don't know if Anne, if you had any thoughts on that. One viewer here believes that they believe that this could have been better handled when viewed wholesomely in Parliament. I think it's the gender rule question about the National Assembly after elections. They believe, let people square it out, let's see who gets to Parliament, and then parties sit down and agree what other seats do we need to look at to ensure that compliance is reached. By the nod of your head, I can tell you completely disagree. Just respond to them. They don't give us their name or where they're writing in from.
So two things. One, let's remember we are over a decade into the Constitution. It's no longer new. And this has remained, actually, Wahiga, of all the promises that were in the Constitution, this is the one thing we have remained very adamant on not actualizing. And so for us, it doesn't matter, even if we say we go after elections, we'll be stuck in the same cycle. We tried it in 2010 with the litigation. We have been at it in 2013. We are now in 2017. Now it's 2022. So for us, and actually what we're indicating to Kenyans, it's not about the women's question only. The question should be that if we have such provisions in the Constitution that we don't want to fulfill, what does that mean in terms of the rule of law? What does it mean in terms of other provisions? Because a time will come and you lose a precedent of the gender question to really justify the non-compliance with other critical questions. We are the ones who went and said the Constitution needs to be able to take care of the two-thirds principle. But over and above that, I think if we are serious and we are seeing a lot of the goodwill, especially from the election management bodies, or the Registrar of Political Parties has been at it. Now the IBC, the courts, of course, have pronounced themselves. The more we have key institutions really pushing for compliance, and that's the language now we have. As you said, it's not about really urging them, it's about compliance. We'll be able to get to that threshold. But before I end on this note, allow me to just weigh in on the question of even the presidential candidates who are women. Yes, it might be a tough task for them to go independent, and if they don't have the bigger parties. But I think the celebration is that if we have women who feel I can go for that top seat, it's still progression. Let them come out. If they get cleared by the IBC, we'll be very happy. Then let them also have a chance to be able to go on the campaign trail and to show Kenyans that yes, I may not be on a big party, but I feel I have what it takes to run this country. This is my manifesto. And again, as we've said over and over, Wahiga, it's about normalizing that women can do the same things as men do. Often we see, and now I think we'll have a very long list of independent presidential candidates, the same way we have men throwing themselves in the race, let's have women who feel they can, because then we are normalizing the playing field. Of course, then as a women's movement, the question of strategy will be important, and then we'll be able to see what's the best way to go about making sure that at least at the highest office or the second highest office, we have someone who's a woman and someone who's able to carry the women's agenda.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for tackling those several issues. Frida says IBC is doing the right thing in terms of reinforcement within its mandate. Gender parity needs to start from the most initial stages. Women need... okay, and Frida then goes on to say, I also believe women need to show up to be seen. Embu is one of the counties with a female gubernatorial aspirant, if not more, and 2 female senatorial aspirants as well. That's one from Frida. You were jotting some points down. Feel free to respond to them.
Yes, I was. In the sense that the first process in an election is actually the party process. And ours is by and large a party democracy. The way our constitution is designed is actually a party democracy. The majority party, the minority party. Independent candidates are supposed to be because of the weaknesses around party democracy. Otherwise, one day when party democracy is working, then you may not have as many independent candidates. So now that it is a party democracy, it actually means that party tickets are where to start. Because the men don't do anything to get party tickets. There is no special leadership quality associated with maleness. Nothing at all. It's just that they are power barons, they have better access to the wielders of power, and so they get party tickets a lot more easier than women. If you subject men and women to the same rules as far as party tickets are concerned, like what has happened in this election with those that have gotten the party tickets, we then have a fair chance at competing in the election. In fact, our biggest problem over the years has actually been party tickets. And I can say that as somebody who vied for independent candidacy in the last election. Once you miss a party ticket, it gets a lot more difficult for you to win. Now that party tickets have been enforced by IEBC, that's the first place to start. Give men and women an equal chance at competing at the election. So that I'm happy with where IBC has started. It is true that the result may still not yield the 2/3. So this conversation on the formula is still not done. But I personally see like Senate will comply with the 16 women senators who are nominated, and the women running for Senate, I think that Senate will hit the numbers that are required. So the only problem will remain for the National Assembly. But party tickets are where to start. Just give the women party tickets first, and then the rest of the journey leave to Kenyans, because we are also talking to Kenyans. Once you have a party ticket, you now go and convince the Kenyans that you have a better manifesto, you have a better strategy, you are a better candidate when you have a party ticket. But kutembea hivi at on your own in this town, unajaribu kuchaguliwa.
You'll find the going is tough.
Going is tough.
Because someone here is concerned that we have seen political parties, so as to comply with that IBC deadline of May 9th, they've resorted to picking women randomly to meet the gender requirement, with top party officials admitting to looking for women who have no intention to run for elective seats in their non-stronghold regions just to meet the requirement.
That's usually part of the journey, because if you look at, for example, the UK, the Labour Party, which now has no problem with gender. When they started, that was the problem of giving women non-winnable. We call them non-winnable seats when you don't get a party ticket in a stronghold. But that's just, you know, these things have a way of...
So that you will not become a threat later on.
They self-correct. No, what happens? Yes. You know, the women are also watching. So like Jubilee, if we give our women seats in Nyanza, where we know they have, first of all, we are not even fronting candidates there, because the ODM, who is an Azimio coalition partner, there's a self-correcting measure because candidates are open. It's an open list. So you can see where you've taken your women. We can see we can see a presidential candidate who means business in terms of gender empowerment, and a presidential candidate who's joking. I personally really like that Gladys Wanga got a gubernatorial ticket in an ODM stronghold. That's how it should be. So it was self-correct. Wacha tu nisaitu. In fact, like we women, we used to even joke, you just give me the ticket in Nyanza. When I'm there, nitajipanga huko Nyanza. You know, first give me the ticket.
We've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go as well. Yeah. One viewer here, and this is a regular viewer of the program, Sir Nixon Dugire, I mean, it's a strong comment, but Anna, I'd like to hear from you on that. He says that it's unfortunate that women are still finding, or women voters are still finding it hard, or according to him, to rally behind one of their own in all the elective posts. Nixon Dugire kutoka Kindaruma. I think he almost wishes there was also a strong woman presidential candidate. And he says if all women were to rally behind that individual, then you could really change the narrative. And he says he's not seeing it yet.
No, I think we have seen it. I think we have seen it in the counties where we've had female governors. Women were able to be part of the huge numbers that really propelled the likes of Honorable Charity Ngilu, Honorable Waiguru, and the late Joyce Laboso into office. So I think it's a question of who do you present, and that's why we are really asking parties, as Priscilla has said, being the main vehicles that really our electoral process is really engineered around, let women have strong candidature in areas that we know they're going to win. And we've seen it. I think we have seen it in Homa Bay. We now, especially in Kirinyaga, it's an all-women agenda. Even at the coast, places that were really predominantly not female-friendly, we now have Honorable Aisha Jumwa in Kilifi. In Kwale, we have Honorable Fatuma Achani, who was a deputy governor, now running for gubernatorial. So I think women know, and women are watching, as Priscilla said, and we have been working with women and men at the grassroots, and the narrative is changing. And that's why for us, we insist to the political parties, if they also have persons at the ground, they ought to know the ground has shifted. How has it shifted? Kenyans are keen on what kind of leader you are. It doesn't matter whether they're a man or a woman. They want leaders who are free from corruption, leaders who can really account, and leaders who will deliver the promises that they have really been pledged towards. So we are hoping that they'll be able to see this as well, and also to be able to present candidates who are really can stand the test of time. But most importantly, to also remember, elections is not just about the candidates, also the voters. So we want processes that will allow women voters and men alike to be able to understand the process. Kenya has one of the most complex electoral processes. On one day, we'll be choosing 6 seats, which from what we understand, looking at the number of candidates, it will be quite a hefty booklet. So we'll want sufficient civic education, political education, and access to polling stations. And we are speaking in a country where we know already the context of insecurity is largely playing out. So these are some of the factors we are seeing. And for us to be able to then have that debate and indicate that women are not rallying themselves around their own, we need to be able to see that in terms of the indicators and the requirements for us to have a free, credible, and fair process, that all the indicators have been checked and that we are able to guarantee even the voters themselves that if they want to choose a candidate of their choice, that access has been granted.
I mean, fair point. It's not just about the candidates, but about the voters. They make the final decision. I don't know if you wanted that as your parting shot. Priscilla, what's your parting shot?
I think back to the running mate.
And what's it going to be?
Let's part on that note. Let's part on the note that this is time for women. In fact, if there was an election in which women were going to get the biggest seat in the sense of the running mate, I think this is the one. And we are hoping that the parties don't disappoint us. The coalitions don't disappoint us. It is true that the Constitution does not require the gender of the running mate. That is true. It could be either gender. But given that the opposite gender rule has been coming up in counties, in the judiciary, in commissions, I think it is just fair that in cabinet now you have a president and a deputy president who are of the opposite gender. That would be the best statement of this election. It actually, as you started correctly, will be a game changer. So please, maybe I beg my own coalition, azimio, msituangushe.
And may I add something? Sorry, just very lightly.
Your final comment. Go ahead.
The decision-making Wahiga is done every day. The men, our brothers, our dads, our partners in this country know that women make decisions at the basic level, and we never complain about it. So all we are saying is to amplify this. Women have demonstrated that they're able to. They're not asking for free seats. Time is now, and you have such a rich reservoir of capable women who are ready to take up leadership. Let's give them a fair chance, and we are not being shy about it. As Priscilla has said, let's start at the top, and we are ready for it. Time is now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think today was one of those shows which have been out there with a big town hall and a big audience, really getting to the bottom of this. And I want to thank both of my guests who've taken their time to come here to be with us, even as various political parties and coalitions tonight continue to grapple with the running mate. Some have called it a headache, so to speak, and what role gender will play in the selection of that running mate. Thank you so much to Priscilla Nyokabi, a former commissioner with the National Gender and Equality Commission and a senatorial candidate, Nyeri County, together with Annie Reri, who's the chair of the Election Observation Group, ELOG, and also the executive director of FIDA, for weighing in. You heard their appeals at the very end. The parties will have their say, and finally the voters will have their say as well, and we leave those decisions to you. On behalf of the whole team that's made this broadcast possible this evening, this has been the Monday Report. I'm sitting in for Trevor Umbija, who will be back next week. My name is Wahiga Mwaura. Our sign language interpreter this evening has been Yulan Zale. So to some extent, we've got some gender balance in the studio today. On behalf of everyone else here, thank you for tuning in from 9 o'clock till now. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good night. Stay safe. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.